So, Tim, why don't you, if you're comfortable, start us off with who you are and what you do and what you're responsible for?
Great. First of all, thank you, Mr. Fernandez, for. I always love joining your class. It's cool. There's always great questions. I represent the ward of Beacon Hill-Cyrville as the municipal councillor, the city councillor here in Ottawa, and that basically looks at, in a nutshell, things like roads. It could be sewage. It could be sidewalks. Transportation, which now I'm actually the transportation chair. So that's all things. And transportation chair, by the way, folks, is not transit. They're two different portfolios, but I'm in charge of snow plowing and roads and all those things. I'm the chair of that committee. But these days in the COVID world, oddly enough, we're actually crossing lines a lot because during these times, even though the federal government administers quite a few of the emergency benefits and the province also through transfers also does it, we want to make sure that the confusion isn't there. So every week, myself, Minister Fortier, we're very fortunate, Mona, as well as MPP Lucille Collard, and my two other colleagues, King and Fleury, we meet minimum 1 week, once a week, sometimes twice, depending if there's new things that are coming out, new programs that are coming out, because a lot of people know me, but don't know the differences between governments. So we work very close together so we can, network and move the inquiries around as quick as we can, acting as almost essentially one government during the COVID crisis. We also have taken on some new roles now too we like to chat with our seniors, just like our students. And we've been doing that very successfully, actually, for, we're 10 weeks in. We've been doing it for about 8 weeks so far. And we always have different guest speakers. Today, we talked with the Ottawa Public Library and a lot of their offerings. So a lot of it is, you think it's standard potholes and light bulbs, but in situations like this, and there's plenty of examples of situations that are outside the norm, but this one is specifically, our roles have changed dramatically. And I'll tell you, Robin, that's on this call, is my executive assistant and really keeps me in line and focused, because where we were getting maybe 200 emails a day in the past, we're definitely over 350, 400 emails a day now. And 90% are not municipal related, but we certainly want to make sure we get them all in the right direction. So that's it in a nutshell. And I know there's be plenty of questions, especially around a lot of the stuff we're dealing with now. When will things open up is always the $1 million question. I think we follow it and monitor it daily. I have another staff member, Sonia, and we follow Premier Ford and Prime Minister Trudeau's announcements every single day and get the message out as quick as we can. But it's always changing, and we have to watch and really listen to and I'll tell you now, the medical officer of health, whether it's the federal, the provincial, or here in our city, Dr. Vera Etches, they really are running all three levels of government. People that are smart are taking direction from the medical professionals, unlike in the States where, let's face it, I'm very happy to be here. So that being said, we're going to continue to monitor and watch exactly what's happening. And we're going to do it unroll in a very slow way. We've seen the numbers kind of go up a little bit in Ottawa. So there was a rumor today they may add another couple people to that 5-person maximum, but I haven't heard that yet. And I think with the small spike, that may not actually happen this week. They're going to have to monitor it, and because I know there's families that like to mingle with other families, have a barbecue in the backyard, and unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. So anyway, sorry to just ramble about Mr. Fernandez, but that's my intro, I guess you could say.
No, that's an excellent intro. Really highlights everything that you do, which is not a small amount. I know that you say that municipal government is the most important and I find it's the busiest level of government, but you have the least amount of funds to do everything that you need to do. So I find the city, you have to do more and stretch your dollars. Yeah. You highlighted some of the stuff about COVID-19, which is great. Can you give us an update as to what are the current rules? What are things that we should know right now, especially considering a lot of Gloucester students celebrate Eid, which is this weekend?
Correct. Thank you for highlighting that. So actually, we're looking at, first of all, it's very suggested to wear masks anytime you can't actually social or physically distance. Even if it's just a scarf over your face, just to prevent the spread of germs. So that is definitely out there. But from a park perspective, again, no team sports, but you certainly can go out, maintain that 2-meter distance from each other. The picnic tables are open again. The dog parks are open again, but still the play structures themselves under provincial order are not to be touched. So if there's children that want to hang out and play on those play structures, we're not quite there yet. But again, you're still allowed to kick a soccer ball around now. You can do all those things, but again, no team sports. So don't go out with 10 buddies and start playing a soccer game. That still can net you a $880 fine by bylaw, which gets their full bylaw, by the way, has more power than the police at this point. They've been given the power by the provincial act and under the state of emergency. So it is very confusing at times because the rules keep changing, but please keep in mind, no team sports at this point.
Good to know. Now, if I were to go out into a park that has a picnic table and I see, and I'm with, 4 family members, and I see another family at another picnic table, are we allowed to spend time together so long as we are 2 meters apart from each other?
You have to keep it apart. Now, of course, I'm assuming you're not a group of people of 10 people. It's just 2 independent groups of people and there's spacing between. Certainly there won't be an issue with that. There's also park ambassadors. And this is something originally that people are like, why would you need that? Well, it's because the rules are so confusing, and you'll see them in your parks, especially the busier parks with vests, and they don't have power of enforcement. They're there to actually answer these there's very confusing questions all the time about this, and nobody wants a ticket. I think people are really into that now. They don't want that kind of problem. Hello, Mr. Parent. Anyway, that being said, those ambassadors are there for those anomalies, I guess you can say. And there are some that are there. I certainly have dealt with there's some special needs children in our community, and the parents are always coming to us asking, look, my kid has autism and needs to run around and do this. Is that a problem? And we always, when there's special circumstances, we bring those back to our medical officer of health for a response, because nobody wants to be that person that gets a ticket.
Mm-hmm. No, that's excellent. Thank you for sharing that with us, especially, as I said, with Eid on this weekend. You can't have the large groups in your home, so it might be communities come together. I saw in the news that there's a mosque in our city that's doing drive-through Eid celebrations this weekend, I believe, which is great. So places of worship are definitely adapting for that. Can you give us an update as to what's open in the city now? Because that's changed in the past, I think 11 days or so, that now there are some things that have opened up and we can go out.
It's changing every single day, and there's an interpretation level that is there. So the province dictates what is out in that first stage of rollout. So for example, you can get your dog groomed now, but you can't get yourself groomed. So if you want to get a haircut, you're going to the groomer, the pet groomer. That's the only way you're getting your haircut. So there's different categories. And there is a site, provincial link, that will details every single kind of business. So again, if you've probably heard, curbside, if you have the door on a street, you're fine to open your business with a whole series of rules that you have to have in place. But at the same time, if you're in a mall, in an enclosed space, and you have to go through a mall, that is not a part of this stage. Another confusing one, and it just happened literally while I'm on my phone, I'm checking in on things. I got an email early this morning saying figure skating, oddly enough, is going to be in the first wave. So they're actually discussing how they're going to allow for figure skating in groups of 5 or less. But then somebody else called me from the hockey community and said, no, they're doing goaltender training. It's already opened at Minto. Well, CTV just put a story out putting the brakes on that, saying, no, you're not allowed to do that yet. So I think there's going to be a lot of confusion. If you feel that there's some kind of doubt about a certain store, and somebody was actually sending us one too about Beacon Hill Mall, I guess there's a store, I won't name it, that was opening up. Well, that's in a mall. You're not allowed to yet. It will take time to really add clarity. And if you've had to go out, which we always suggest don't go out if you don't have to. Those lineups are getting mighty long at the hardware store. I will tell you that.
They certainly are. I live across the street from a home hardware, and the few times that we go out for the grocery store, which is also there, we just see that line snaking around, and I sometimes pity those people, but then at the same time, I'm like, you're choosing to go to the hardware store. That is on you if you're going to stay in that line for a good long while.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I found really interesting with everything that's happened with COVID is that the federal government seems to have kind of not stopped, but they're in a holding pattern. The provincial government seems to not stop, but also be in a holding pattern. The city government does not seem to be able to put itself in a holding pattern. So while you're dealing with COVID, what are the other big things that you're dealing with that have to get dealt with?
Sure, that's a great question. So now we've actually gotten back into the swing of, first of all, I've been pressing very hard for video meetings, in particular Zoom, with the city, and we were testing it out on committee level, not council level yet. I'm having a very difficult time convincing the mayor to go to Zoom. He likes to do literally a telephone call, like, hello, is this 1980s, for our council meetings. And I hope he watches this video, by the way. But I keep pressing him because all of our committees and our city clerk is now legislatively says, yes, we're in a good spot. Now, when we do run these committees, a lot of the things that we're dealing with are of a timely nature. That's how we started. But now we're actually realizing this is going to go on for quite a while. This isn't going to be solved overnight. So we have to get back into action. So actually, you're going to hear a transportation committee, which now I'm the chair. We're going ahead with a Zoom call next week, and there'll be some cool things. Don't scoop me. You'll like this. E-scooters will be on the agenda, talking about the use of e-scooters. So I'm very excited about that. And a couple other things related to snow and different things like that. The agenda will get posted actually next week. So we're getting in the groove on those things. And of course, I think you follow things quite closely. The official boundary, that's two committees coming together, ARAC, which is our Agricultural and Planning Committee, as well as the Planning Committee, which I sit on. I used to be vice chair, but now I'm just a member. And we invite the public out, delegations. We literally had 3 days, I think it was 90 hours of delegations and discussion and debate, all revolving around intensification within the city's boundary. So in a nutshell, if you look at the current boundary of the city of Ottawa, it's basically everything inside the green belt we're trying to contain. We don't want to say take farm fields and huge swaths of land and start putting houses on them because there's a cost to it. At the same time, it's a delicate balance. It seems so easy to say that's it. Even though staff say a balanced approach of 1,350 to 1,650 hectares is better than the 2,200 plus that they wish to have. Oh my goodness, you got it. This is great. So good. So this is very good. So thank you. So this is the current boundary. But the thing that we're talking about is little parcels along the side. That's what staff recommend. Now, that debate had me ask some questions, and I'm actually preparing a piece to put out to the community. And when you live in a place like Beacon Hill-Cyrville, I've always supported intensification. You can check my record. Every time a building goes in, like the 5 buildings at Blair Station, beside Blair Station, the 22-story towers, supported those rental towers, supported the 30-story that's going in at Gloucester, supported the 4 going at Carling and Cummings, Cummings and Ogilvie, as well as Cyrville and Ogilvie. There's another 4 towers. I've always supported going high. I always love that. Along the transit node is very, very important. Where it becomes a little more of a challenge is I asked the question, okay, if we were to go with, let's just say we said zero expansion, too bad. You develop on whatever lands you have. Yes, golf courses will turn into housing because that's what will happen. The fact we have to add in another 400,000 people, that's a lot more people. The province still has to okay what we say. It's not appealable. the developers cannot challenge. But at the same time, it does go to the minister, the provincial minister, and they have to approve it. Now, I did ask the question specifically to city staff. If we went with the zero option, what's the odds that they would approve it? Slim to none. So the easy thing to do is say, great, let's go zero. We'll let the minister be the bad man. But in that scenario, it creates a lot of challenges. The other big issue we have in our neighborhood, and I'm going to look for it on my screen if you don't mind, is we actually have a lot of seniors and we have a lot of youth in this community. And this will get a little bit technical, so forgive me. With so many youth and seniors in the community, like I live in the same street as my in-laws on Hamlin, we see a lot of kids coming back as adults with their kids. We already see the very high cost of housing within the community at this point. That is a challenge right now because our current tax roll is based on market assessment. So MPAC, which is the province of Ontario, comes and they assess where the most desirable communities are in the entire city. So let me give you a good example, and if I can have I'm just going to see, where can I take control?
Like to present your screen?
Oh, great, thank you. Present now. Great, my entire screen. Perfect. So I'm just going to flip over for a second to not my Spotify list. Let's see here.
What music Tim Tierney listens to while he's in isolation?
If you don't know it's Nickelback by now, you're not listening.
Anything else on rotation?
I do. I actually like Sam Cooke. Yeah, there's a few. There's a couple of country songs, but not many. Oh, here we go. So here's our big challenge, and this is where I have a big problem. So I asked the question, where would we put all these people if we selected option zero? And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Even with the selection of a 1350 to 1650, which the developers are still screaming about, they want 2200 plus. We're still going to have intensification. We have to find places to put people. I asked the question to Steve Willis, the director of the department, where would you be putting people? Because first of all, we are already seeing a very high impact assessments. I've seen them jump 25% in the past. What are we looking at now? It could be a 50% market rate increase on the value of your home, which you pay municipal property taxes on. So in a nutshell, Cumberland could go down. Beacon Hill would jump 50%. It would really change the dynamic. The second big issue is all the housing, and this is a current map within the area, is currently R1, R2. And R1, R2 means you only can go so high. You only can build so close to the property line. There's specific rules around that. I asked the question, where would we be looking if it's not along the transit spine? And the resulting answer was, well, the desirable areas, and yes, New Montreal Road Station, 1.9 kilometers from the station, is part of the transit-oriented development area. So anything in these circles will most likely go to an up zone. Now, that means if you're living in, and I'll just, I think I'll turn my share off. Is it off? Did I turn it back off?
I don't know. It hasn't been on this whole time.
Oh, it wasn't? Oh, darn it. Oh, so you didn't even see my screen? Ah, darn. A window, entire screen. Okay, a Chrome tab. Here we go. My bad. You're like, what is this guy doing? All right, Cyrville, Blair. Found it. I found it. Can you see that?
There we go.
Hey, so this, you're like, he's rambling and just staring at a screen. Okay, so here's the 1.9 that I mentioned, kilometers around the transit stations. They become the areas that would most likely upzone. With a zero, you can almost take it to the bank. We're upzoning those. With the 1350 to 1650, it becomes less desirable to do that, but at the same time, it still could happen. So these are all big concerns for these communities, including Pineview, including Cyrville, and because they all fall within those radiuses of 1.9 kilometers. That's where the delicate balance is right now, and why I'll go stop presenting, and why out of the committee there was only one dissent during that vote. But keep in mind, when we get to full council, there will be a few more that will vote against the staff recommendation and prefer the option 0, which is certainly the right. But a lot of the questions are around either you support intensification, and when you have a building application come in that wants to go up, you have to allow it to go up, because we have to jam 400,000 more people into the city in the next 25 years.
Which is a lot of people. And for things like Severine, do you live in an apartment or do you live in a house?
I live in a house.
In a house, okay. And Mafuza, you live in an apartment, correct?
Yes.
And Amani, how about you?
I live in a house.
And Rayan, how about you? I don't know if Rayan's going to reply. But so right now we have 2/3 of our people are in houses that could potentially be eyed by developers to eventually go upward. And we know in the Beacon Hill-Cyrville area, right across the street from Gloucester, are a whole bunch of single-family homes that if people decide to move out of there because the property values have increased, so they want to sell them and make a lot of profit, developers go in there, buy those houses, demolish them, and then build very tall buildings that might change how the community operates. And what I read in the news today is that there's also concerns around elevators and such, more for businesses that are moving out of their office space downtown. But if COVID-19 becomes something that we have to deal with permanently, well, those massive high towers that in a 0 increase, so our boundaries would stay the exact same, those towers are going to have to go really high, and then somebody living on the 22nd floor, that's not going to be a fun elevator to wait for all by yourself.
Yeah, and good point, Mr. Fernandez. I think the other big thing that came out of the study is a lot of new Canadian families are actually, it's not the typical, a small family, especially if they're new to the country. They want to live in multiple families together in a larger home. So there still is quite an appetite from that perspective. But my biggest concern is I don't want to force out, and I am elected to represent approximately 35,000 people, is I want to make sure our seniors and children still can find it affordable to live in the communities. And that is the biggest challenge, I think, that's there. And people will wake up to it. I'll fully admit, we haven't had too much email traction on this one. I think people understand, but the people that are confused and go, oh, why would you even expand? As soon as I give them a phone call or chat with them and explain, if you're fully satisfied with the upzone that will come, it will come towards, I have the date somewhere. It will come in, I think it's about 6 months. So right now we're voting for staff to go ahead and say, yes, let's proceed to the next stage before we file it with the province of Ontario for approval. We're just giving the authority to do that. I think there's going to be a big wake-up call, even with the staff selected option, which is most likely going to win at council, where those areas are going to be that staff will identify that have to go to an upzone. And we're full of R1, R2 in Beacon Hill-Cyrville. That can go to R4, which is a big deal. So I'm doing the best for my constituency, and we'll see how it plays out next week at council. But stay tuned, because this is just the first steps. This is going to go on for about a year. You're going to hear about upzonings in communities that people don't want it. I'll tell you, even Councillor Leeper, a great guy, work with him all the time. He represents Westboro, and he's kind of torn too, because now that is what they consider a desirable location for upzoning near transit as well. So it is a very tough call, and he voted different because he feels that members of his constituency want him to vote that way. So it is different. It's 23 wards. It's 23 different situations of rural, suburban, and urban, and I'm in the weird gray zone because we're urban suburban. We're in the green belt, and that's the challenge that we have.
Yeah, and just to just kind of summarize it, because this is a very complex topic, and I mean, I've taught civics and currently teaching civics. This is not something that we usually go over at this level because the civics course is quite short. But it is super important for all of our citizens to understand that, Sabrina, Mani, Mafuza, you're going to, at some point, plan to buy a home. And the decisions that are being made today will directly impact what homes you can or cannot buy. So Mafuza says, so depending on the chosen location, are the people living there going to have a chance to say they might have to?
Yeah, if depending on where they decide to do the upzone, the people living there, if they have concerns with the decision made by the higher ups, so will they have a chance to have their questions answered?
That's a great question. So what will happen is staff will come back with the recommended areas, which unfortunately city councillors don't have the ability to jerry rig or modify, but there will allow for public consultation. And then of course we'll go back with those new upzone areas where public delegations can come out and speak to, hey, it's great that we want to intensify, but why would you do it here? Like, you can actually have your 5 minutes of time, which will most likely still be done by Zoom at that point. So I can assure you we'll have many delegations. I think it's going to be, even though locally here, I'm not getting a tremendous amount of emails on it, but if they do select this neighborhood for an upzone, it's less so with the staff recommended option. I think it won't be too bad. But if by some weird chance they pick this area, it will wake people up. I will hear from a lot of people. And the great point is about affordability. So if you want to live in the community where you grew up, maybe you're out and you're finished college and you're ready for work, and you're like, I want to move back into the community where I lived my entire life. Well, the odds are the cost of homes now, even Loyola, just next to us, next to me, those condos used to be $200,000. They're going for $300,000 now because of light rail. If you compound that with intensification and the 1.9 radius around there, it's going to be almost completely unaffordable. You'll have to buy a home in Cumberland or maybe even further out in Russell outside the city of Ottawa, because between property taxes, which will definitely go up, and you look at the cost of homes, it would be very hard to live back in your home community again. And that is the challenge that we have.
And that's a really big challenge. And just to show what they're trying to do, if you look on the map here, the green part is the green belt. And so the goal with the city, and for those of you who aren't familiar with what the green belt is, it's a very large protected forest area. And the city of Ottawa, so all of this is the city of Ottawa. We are geographically the largest city, pretty sure in North America. This forest runs right through our city. And so you can actually see over here is Orleans, where I live. And so I have to drive through the green belt in order to get there. I used to live in Barrhaven down here, and so I'd have to drive through the green belt to get there. And my dad lives out in Canada, so I'd have to drive through the green belt in order to get to him. So I'm used to crossing the city back and forth. What the big plan would be in terms of this zero intensification or zero expansion, basically you're going to try and keep everything within this area. So they don't want to expand as much as possible. There'll be some expansions out here, but the big goal is to keep this area where all the intensification will happen. By expanding out into this area, they're hoping to keep prices accessible so that new Canadians and Canadians such as you, Sabrine, and such, when you get older, can buy homes so that you can grow your families. But it does require adding space to this area that we can actually build. And on top of that, one of the other problems is that a lot of people don't realize this, but Ottawa actually has farms. We have a lot of farms. And so even though we're going to be extending the boundaries out, we now have to contend with this farmland that we don't want to get rid of, especially when we see COVID and the impacts of that. We have in our city a food supply source. And if we get rid of all of that, then we are more at risk if another pandemic eventually comes. Amani had a question that's not related to this, but definitely is important to ask. So Amani does celebrate Eid. And so she has this very specific question about, since everyone knows how we all get together as families, are we allowed to have two families in the same car? Is that okay?
Yeah, my understanding is no, but I do want to clarify just in case I'm wrong on that. So I have the bat signal where I can make a quick phone call, and I'll confirm that, and maybe I can follow up with you, Mr. Fernandez, in probably about an hour.
Sure.
Yeah, they really they're saying, the 5-member max situation, and but I do want to check on that one specific one, because I could see, if you have a minivan, why not use it and save driving 2 cars around the city, kind of thing. But yeah. I think it's suggested no, but I want to see if that's a rule or if it's just a suggestion.
And what about so my husband and I have seen this a couple of times now, and we always laugh to ourselves, where people bring their cars to an area, they all distance themselves the 2 meters apart, and they lift up their trunks, and they have a giant circle form. Is that actually okay, or is that a no?
Yeah, no, apparently they're not issuing tickets for it. Of course, you have to stay under the 5, so if you have 2 in a household kind of thing, and they're doing that, they're not issuing any tickets for that right now. You have to maintain the spacing. And that came up in a discussion where there was confusion about, can I invite people over with their lawn chair to sit at the end of my laneway and have a beverage? And it was a muddy water at first. And at the end of the day, Vera Etches came out and said, yes, of course you can have a beverage with your neighbors along your laneway, all distanced. But again, you got to really maintain that group of 5. I actually, like I said, live on the same street as my in-laws, and I have a dog. I have a golden retriever, and my in-laws have a golden retriever, and they like to play. So whenever we go over, we literally have signs that say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we hang them on each other jokingly and say, okay, that's it. So we have a family. There's about 15 of us between a few family members. We only can go over maximum 5 at a time to let our dogs run around in the backyards or hang out and chat. We've been really holding tight on that. Even my own son, that's 20 years old, he's living in a aunt's house that's just over a block away because she's trapped in the States. So the house is empty. To ensure we're safer, he's actually staying on his own now. So he's learning how to grow up. He's essentially kicked out of the nest because of COVID and learning to live on his own. But these are the weird times we're in right now.
Yeah, and Monty, that's a great question. When Mr. Tierney gets back to me about that answer, I will definitely communicate that forward to you. But the big thing to remember is that maximum 5 group. So no more than 5 people in a group. And so that might mean you have to sub people in and out, where it's like, okay, you get to go and talk to them for half an hour, and then you come back into the house and you send out somebody else so that you can see each other. But it is that hard cap of 5, which has not yet changed.
Now, in a weird twist, literally in 10 minutes from now, the city is actually going to be doing a kind of a town hall virtual media availability. And I'm certain a lot of these questions are going to come up. A good friend of ours and used to work in our office, Allison Sandor, is actually one of the moderators and the one answering the questions and answers from bylaw services. So I'll be paying attention to that after this is over as well, just because it's changing every day. And I fully expected they were going to add it on to 10 or 2 families today, but we haven't seen that come out, and I think that's because the numbers kind of spiked a little bit recently. And have you seen, Mr. Fernandez, the map of Ottawa ward by ward, the infection rate by chance?
I'm not gonna lie, I haven't. I found at the beginning of this that because I'm so news oriented, I was actually getting depressed because it was all negative news. And so I've kind of made it where I check it once in the morning, once in the evening, and I limit myself to maybe about 2 articles about COVID a day at most, because otherwise it's just sad information overload. And what my husband actually brought up, which was a great point, is that there's nothing in the news talking about the recovery rates. which
That's
is
right.
a positive component of this. And it was only recently that I think it was over half of the cases in Canada are actually fully recovered now. But we're not seeing that. We're only seeing the continued infection rate and not the fact that people are by and large recovering from this, which would help bring some security to families. So no, I have not looked at the ward by ward map. I also am not traveling outside of the Orleans ward anytime soon.
Good.
We're moving in 2 weeks, literally down the street. Like we're going from Des Epinette all the way down to the other end of Des Epinette.
Nice.
But we're still in the same ward, so.
Well, Matt Luloff will be happy about that, I assume. Des Epinette. Yeah, you got Matt Luloff, I believe. He's a good guy. Yeah, so in a nutshell, it's you can see where the little clusters are in the city. Not to get people all worried, but we're about 108 in Beacon Hill-Cyrville. Where you have Barrhaven, which has quite a high number. I think they're like 135 or something. But they actually do publish the recovery rates, and they're pretty decent. So I'm happy about that. But it is still a growing concern, I think, at least for the next few months. But a lot of people they're anxious to get out there, and the big problem we're going to have, I think, is going to be when it's really hot out there, and we're starting to feel it now. And there's some families that don't have air conditioning. It's going to be a challenge. I go out of my way every year to act like a goofball, and every splash pad I get opened up. When I open Loyola, I throw on the sports trunks, and I got out and danced around and had a good time with the community to open that one. We have a brand new one going in at Elmridge right now. They're constructing it right now. But just like we opened up a great play structure in Quarry Park last year, at the end of the year, just as the snow was coming. But we can't celebrate them, and we can't touch all these places where we can run around and stay cool in the water. That is going to be our big challenge that's coming right now.
Now, with the splash pads, because that could be interesting, if you have someone who's wearing gloves and they operate whatever buttons, could you not do possibly like timed underneath or in the water, so then families could, because realistically the water's just coming out and then it's being washed away.
And that exact question I just saw go in to our friends at Ottawa Public Health to respond to. When I get the response, I'll send it to you, because I'm getting a lot of inquiries. They're saying, hey, oh my goodness, I see they're putting like a sprinkle flower into the splash pad. We're excited about this. And I'm like, well, the fence may not come down from around it for a while. So I'll let you know what the response on that is.
All right. And we'll do one last question, because then you have your afternoon appointments and such, and we don't want to keep you from those, especially if you're going to be passing on all that important information to us. What message would you like to share with Gloucester High School students and the broader community? What do you want to communicate out to your constituents and such?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. And specifically with Gloucester High School, look, you guys are in the history books 2 times in a row. You've brought 2 great school communities together between Rideau High School and Gloucester High School, and that was one graduating historic point in time. And now, as sad as it is where what's going on with COVID and graduation, you're going to be in the history books. My parents, my grandparents, great-grandparents can never say there wasn't a graduating class. You are truly part of the history books, which is something you can take a little bit of pride in. But I wish everyone luck over the summer. And I think we're all going to be paying attention to see what happens in the brand new year that is upcoming for anyone going on to post-secondary education. But we will get through this. We're going to get through it. If you do a little history and research, if you're bored, look at the Spanish flu. Look at all the pandemics and challenges we've had in the past. They went on much longer because they didn't have the ability. They didn't know enough back then. I think hopefully there's so much research money going into this, and Canada is a leader in this, by the way. We're spending a ton of money, good investment. And Ontario is one of those leader groups too. I just announced yesterday, Premier Doug Ford was talking about the real big research projects. I think it was 13, Robin? The big 13 that they feel very confident could crack the code on this, and they're dumping tons of money into this. That's good news. That means that vaccine will come that much quicker. So we will get through it. Sorry to ramble so much, And I look forward to chatting with you guys again anytime you need me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. If anyone does have any questions or need more information, Mr. Tierney's website, I'm just putting it in the chat right now. Tim Tierney, he does all these awesome videos once a day, every day. And it was actually interesting. I commented on Facebook about how you were apologizing for being late with the video, but it summarizes all the information from the day, and they're usually not long, 5-6 minutes. And there are some visual aids as well. So if you are wanting that information, timtierneyottawa.com is the place to, or .ca is the place to go, where it's all collected in one spot for anybody to look at.
Thank you very much.
Mafuzer just had one last question. Because of the weather and Eid included, people are getting around to places, and so are people allowed to visit Ottawa attractions like the Parliament, for example, or the river?
Yeah, so it looks like the NCC pathways, they are open now, and you can see that they've opened up a lot of the bike weekend stuff. That's actually been extended. So those roadways are open for walking and things like that. Again, the park rules are pretty straightforward. The ambassadors will be in a lot of those parks that can help guide you if you're concerned, but the 2 meters, don't go in more than groups of 5. So, you don't want to put out a message saying, let's all gather in this one park, and then hundreds of people come down. That could result in fines. So it will be tough, but I'm going to actually, Robin, just remind me as soon as we get off and I get off to the other call, type something up and send it over to Vera just to confirm, especially with Eid this weekend. I think it's good to be very clear. We don't want anyone to get any kind of fines from bylaw services. And we'll get that back to you. They respond within like an hour.
Perfect. And Mafuzer, just quickly kind of summarize it. Basically, if you're outside in green space, it's okay. Just don't use any of the structures that are there. Parliament Hill, I'm not 100% sure because it is like Parliament Hill, but they've reopened Gatineau Park, and I think they've actually reopened it for cars to go and park there now as well. But in the city of Ottawa, anywhere there's a park, and if you can walk there or bike there, feel free to go there. Just you can't use these structures that are there. So no play structures, no like basketball court and whatnot. But you can go, bring a blanket, have a picnic, all that fun stuff, maximum 5 people. But if it's a green space, it's an open space. And so feel free to go and use that.
Oh, unless, and forgive me, if your family is larger than 5 people, you're not part of the 5. If you have 10 people in your family, immediate family, you're fine.
And that's really good to know, because a lot of our families at Gloucester, several of my students have 6, 7, 8 siblings. So if it's your immediate family, basically whoever lives in your house, whoever is in your household can go wherever you're going. But if you are meeting people outside of your house, maximum 5.
That's right. Yeah.
Bingo. Well, thank you very much again, everybody.